Where we stopped yesterday? Yesterday we are discussing about storage virtualization. Just we had started, isn't it? Before that, what were the concepts we discussed? Hardware virtualization techniques we discussed. Then after that, what we discussed? Operating system level virtualization, application level virtualization, and programming language virtualization, isn't it? So these were the concepts we discussed. Yesterday we started with operating system level virtualization. So in that case, there is no VMM or a hypervisor required. Virtualization will be in a single operating system, and the operating system kernel allows for multiple isolated user space instances. That means when we say operating system is like multi-user system. So multi-user system means each user will be provided with some isolated resources like dedicated memory, dedicated CPU, and so on. And it doesn't require any VMM or hypervisor, and it offers the opportunity to create different and separated execution environments. Isn't it? Say, for example, when I say Unix is an multi-user system, and when I allocate the same system for multiple users, obviously each user will be having his own login, separate login and separate execution environment, isn't it? So, and the example for that is if you use the softwares like Root, Jails, or OpenVZ, you can experience how to deal with such a multi-user system and without using any hypervisor, explicit hypervisor. Then programming language level virtualization, we saw that example of Java, how we can use Java programs to achieve ease of deployment, managed execution, and portability across various platforms and operating systems. And we know that Java is architectural neutral. That means it supports for any hardware architecture, and it is operating system independent. That means it executes on any operating system. Why? Because it just needs the help of the JVM, which is part of any given operating system. That JVM can interpret the class file, that is the bytecode. So in that sense, it is portable and it is easy to deploy. And that bytecode provides uniform execution environment across different platforms, and it simplifies the development and deployment efforts. And it provides more security. Why it provides more security? Because you cannot understand what is that bytecode. If it is source code, you can understand. So what is the implementation logic, how it's been implemented, what are the interfaces or the classes or inbuilt methods that are used. You will get some details, but when it is the bytecode, you don't get any such information. It is highly secure. Then application level virtualization is more concerned with partial file system, libraries, and operating system component emulation. Then we saw what are the strategies for implementing application level virtualization. That is, there are two strategies. One is interpretation and binary translation. Interpretation, minimal cost, because there is nothing like translating the instruction from one format to another format. So therefore the startup cost is less, but it's a huge overhead. But whereas in case of binary translation, the startup overhead is high because it takes time to translate the binary instructions. But what happens when the instructions are many in number, you can reuse it. Once you can translate, you can catch it and you can reuse it. So in that sense, compared to interpretation technique, binary translation yields better performance. Okay, then now from here we need to start, that is storage virtualization. So first of all, we need to understand what is the need for storage virtualization. See, the very need for storage virtualization is, see, when we virtualize, what happens? Say, for example, if I say we are virtualizing storage, it will create the physical copy of the storage, isn't it? It will virtualize the physical copy of the storage. That means here you have two storages. One is logical storage or the virtual storage, and another one is the physical storage. If you want to distinguish these two, then you can do so by using storage area network. That means if you want to decouple the physical storage of the hardware from its logical representation, then you need to go for storage virtualization, and using network based virtualization known as SAN, that is storage area network. So SAN is a network based virtualization. Without interconnecting the networks, you cannot virtualize storage. Hence, it is called as network based virtualization. Let us see what is network virtualization. Network virtualization combines hardware appliances and specific software for the creation and management of virtual network. That means it uses the hardware components and some software for the creation and management of virtual network, isn't it? So basically you need a software, and by using the underlying, if you get the software, specific software, then you can virtualize the underlying hardware. That's the concept. And it can aggregate different physical networks into a single logical network. That means say you have one physical LAN setup, and you have also one more wireless LAN. You have two different networks. One is physical LAN and another one is wireless LAN. Both you can combine to, and you can still give a single logical network image to the users. Even though you are combining two different networks, it can give a single logical network image to the end users. So that's the advantage of network virtualization. That means it is up to you how many networks you want to consolidate. You can consolidate or combine, but still it will give a single network image to the end users. Next is desktop virtualization. You can see the diagram first. In case of desktop virtualization, there is a bare hardware in the lowermost layer, and above that there is type 1 hypervisor. So we know that type 1 hypervisor should be installed directly upon the hardware. Then it facilitates you to install as many guest operating systems you want, and it takes the place of operating system. In case of desktop virtualization, the hypervisor takes the place of operating system, and it supports multiple guest operating systems, and you can install various applications on it. Say for example, you have certain applications which must be installed on Macintosh, then you can install on Macintosh. Then if you want to install one application on exclusively on Linux, then you can go with one Linux application. And if you have some .NET application, obviously you need Windows, install Windows guest operating system. That is, it supports for multiple guest operating systems. Then hypervisor type 1 is similar to server virtualization and is for testing software on multiple operating systems. This is very, very important from testing perception. Usually what happens when you develop a software, especially some web application or mobile application, simply cannot find this application will not be efficient when you open it in Windows, when you open it in Linux and in Macintosh. Before stating that, you have to test it, how it behaves in Macintosh, how it behaves in Windows and Linux, isn't it? For such experimentation, this desktop virtualization is very, very helpful. Once you install the hypervisor, upon that you can install as many guest operating systems you want, and reduce the hardware cost. Yes, why? Because to install different operating systems, you are not having dedicated or the separate hardware setup. You are installing guest operating systems, but you are having only one set of hardware components. So that is the reduced hardware cost. And this is local desktop virtualization. So remember, this type of virtualization is called as local desktop virtualization. This is not the remote desktop virtualization. This is local desktop virtualization. So remote desktop virtualization means you need to rely on cloud setup, where you, for example, you will go to Amazon AWS. There you will purchase some instances. That is, you will go for infrastructure as a service, where you will purchase an remote system. Upon the remote system, you are going to install the guest operating system, whatever the operating system that you want, and there only you will be selecting how much RAM you want, how much storage you want, everything. Then that becomes remote desktop virtualization. Now what you are seeing in this diagram, that is called as local desktop virtualization. The next is application server virtualization. See, in case of application with server virtualization, one of the basic thing is you can consolidate how many available application servers are there. You can combine all those application servers, but still it will give you a single virtual application server image. And the advantage part is that you can achieve very high availability, because if one application server goes down, another application server is available and it will be up and running. You can configure like that, and it will give you a single image impression, and you can achieve very high reliability and availability. So availability means like all the time it is up and running. Reliable means you can rely on that. If you install any application on such a server, you can rely on that. It will be available for you anytime. And it provides better quality of service rather than emulating a different environment. It provides better quality of service. Why? Because it is not just one application server. If that goes down, or if its capacity is exceeded, your application will be moved to some other application server without your knowledge. And downtime will be very minimal. It's a negligible amount of time, maybe like seconds, few seconds. Within seconds, that may happen. Students, anything you want to ask about desktop virtualization and application server virtualization? Hello? In case of application server virtualization, actually being the end user, you will not come to know like exactly when you, because there what happens, they'll be consolidating the application servers. They'll be grouping together multiple application servers to give you a single application server image. But you cannot find out, or you will not come to know what is the location of your application and exactly in which application server it is used. You can know only if you are an admin. If you are an admin, you can know that. Otherwise, being end user, it is not possible. Next, virtualization and cloud computing. So what is the relationship between virtualization and cloud computing? Friends, any idea? May I get few answers? What is the relationship between virtualization and cloud computing? Junjar Singh?
Sir?
Junjar, yeah, tell me what is the relationship between computing and virtualization?
Similarity, sir. Both are not physical, sir. They are.
Yeah. Cloud is used create that storage that resource in it. Isn't it? It can be computing resource, network resource, infrastructure, anything. So basically, the virtualization is the fundamental concept of cloud computing. Without virtualization, there is no cloud, because in cloud whatever you access, that is virtual, isn't it? So therefore, virtualization is the basic or the fundamental concept of cloud computing. Virtualization plays an important role in that's why point. Virtualization plays an important role in cloud computing. Why? Because Virtualization is a fundamental concept of cloud. Virtualization technologies are primarily used to offer configurable computing environments and storage. So this word is important, which is given in red color. It provides configurable computing environment. What is that configurable environment? See, when you what is required, how much is required. Gangubai, hello.
Sir? Yes, sir.
Hello. Hello, students. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, actually, internet was the problem, so net went off. So where I stopped when it got disconnected? There,
From back, sir, where you started, sir.
there,
Virtualization
huh?
and cloud computing.
Oh, from here itself.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Actually, I had finished that next slide as well. I had finished the
From
server
starting,
consolidation and
voice was breaking, sir.
okay. So we're talking about what is the relationship between virtualization and cloud computing. As you know that when there is no virtualization, obviously there can be no cloud. Why? Because virtualization is a very fundamental concept of cloud computing. In cloud computing, what happens? Whatever the services that provides, it is based upon virtualization. It would be infrastructure service, platform service, or software service. So everything depends upon virtualization. So therefore, when there is no virtualization, obviously, then there is no cloud computing. That's why virtualization plays an important role in cloud computing. Virtualization technologies are primarily used to offer configurable computing environments and storage. Here we need to understand what is the meaning of configurable computing environments and storage. When I consider any cloud setup, it's a huge resource available, huge computing resource, storage resource, and huge networking resource available. So when you are implementing or any application, if you are hosting any application on cloud, you need to select how much of processor is required, how much of um, server space is required, isn't it? So that you need to configure. That is why the cloud is, it provides configurable computing environments and storage, and even the storage you can configure. Say for example, right now you have taken 20 GB. If the demand arises, you can increase it to 30 GB. You can increase it to 40 GB. Depending upon your need, you can configure. Then hardware virtualization is an enabling factor for solutions in the IaaS market segment. That means in infrastructure as a service market segment, hardware virtualization is one of the enabling factor. That means hardware virtualization comes under infrastructure related services, and there is a huge demand for that within the market, IT market. Why? Because nowadays people don't want to take, as a company, they don't want to take the risk of maintaining the hardware resources and deploying some specialized personnel for that and investing a lot of money. Instead of that, they can go with cloud setup where they can take hardware virtualization. Then programming language virtualization is a technology leveraged in platform as a service offering. 1 minute, please. See, programming language virtualization, it's a technology leveraged in platform as a service. So why it's a technology? Programming language virtualization. See, if I consider Java, how to achieve programming language virtualization means you compile it in one system, get the class file, and you go to another system and you run it. By using the JVM there, it will run. So now what is that JVM? That JVM is providing the platform for that program to run efficiently. So therefore, programming language virtualization is a technology leveraged in offerings. That means you need to keep in your mind, students, to achieve, say for example, if anybody asks you in the interview, so which hypervisor is used to achieve programming language virtualization? Give me an example. So actually, do we need any hypervisor to achieve this programming language virtualization? Hello? Do we need any hypervisor here?
No, sir.
Without having the hypervisor, we can achieve it. Just we need JVM. If it is Java, if it is .NET, we need CLI, isn't it? Common Language Interface or Common Language Runtime, CLR. Next slide is about server consolidation and virtual machine migration. So first let us see what is server consolidation. Server consolidation is a concept wherein you can bring together multiple servers and you can group them to give a single image impression to the end users. That means say you have 10 application servers, you can combine those 10 application servers and you can facilitate them to install a lot of applications. And being the end user, they will not come to know in which application server their application is being installed. It will just give them a single applications, a single robust application server impression. Now here you can see in the first diagram, we have server A and B. We are grouping together server A and B, and upon that, so now we have interlinked server A and B, and upon that we have installed virtual machine manager. Now virtual machine manager is part of server A as well as server B. We have combined both the servers, and upon that we have installed virtual machine manager, that is the hypervisor. Now upon the hypervisor, then on server A we have installed 4 virtual machine instances, and upon server B we have created 2 virtual machines. Now overall we have 6. 2 are running on server B and 4 are running on server A. Now I want to migrate these 2 virtual machine instances which are running on server B to server A. Now after migration, you can see this is the second diagram. After migration, here 4 plus 2, it has become 6. And whereas in server B, there is nothing. There were 2 virtual machine instances which we have migrated to server A. This concept is called as virtual machine migration. And there is one more concept, that is live virtual machine migration. Live virtual machine migration means when the application is up and running, at that time if you are migrating it from one server to another server, then we call it as live migration of virtual machines. Now you will be thinking, what will be the downtime? See, downtime will be very negligible. Sometimes it will be 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 2 to 5 seconds, the migration time. That means almost the applications will be up and running. Isn't it? When you are using any application, if you are stuck for 2 seconds, that is ignorable. You will not come to know why it has struck. Isn't it? That is ignorable. You feel that application is up and running. So that's how the live migration takes place. So now we are reaching to the end of virtualization. Now let us see what are the pros and cons. First, the pros, that is the advantageous part. Reducer spending. Can anyone tell me how virtualization can reduce spending? Can you give one scenario example how virtualization can reduce spending? Anyone? Purti, are you here? Purti? Vaishnavi?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, tell me how virtualization can reduce spending. No idea? Shruti? Shruti, are you here? Shruti?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that? How virtualization reduces spending? So far, I have given so many examples, then how to implement virtualization and all. Now you know everything. So just give an example how, or justify the statement. Virtualization reduces spending. Okay, I'll consider one example of desktop virtualization. So in case of desktop virtualization, upon the bare hardware, we will be installing type 1 hypervisor, that is a VMM. Then upon that, we can create as many guest operating systems we want. Now, usually what happens, usually in the traditional system, there will be one hardware setup, upon that we install one operating system, isn't it? Now here in this desktop virtualization, there are so many guest operating systems. All the guest operating systems are using the same hardware, isn't it? They are having the same hardware and they're sharing the same CPU. So like that, you are saving a lot of money. You are using the same hardware architecture, but you are installing a lot of guest operating system. So like one Ubuntu, one Macintosh, and one Windows. Let us assume Macintosh doesn't support for your hardware. Now, whatever the hardware architecture that is required for Macintosh, that will be emulated by the hypervisor. So now look at the advantage part. So now you need not buy any separate hardware to install Macintosh. So in that sense, you are reducing spending. Then second one is sandbox. Sandbox means hiding the implementation details. For the applications, whatever you have installed on top of virtualization, they will not come to know that they are accessing the virtual resources. They'll be having the impression as if they are accessing the physical hardware directly. And they will not come to know how you have achieved, like what kind of virtualization you have implemented, how they are getting the resources, or such details will be hidden. That is called sandbox. Then portability. So just now we gave one example for migration of virtual machines from one application server to another application server. That means, see here, let us assume you have installed one web application using which is developed using Java. It is running in this VM instance. Can you see this arrow? Hello? Now let us assume this application needs to be migrated from server B to server A. After migration, it will be running as if it was running on server B. So that means the VMs, the migration is portable. The applications, whatever that are there, that can be ported from one server to another server without any difficulty. So therefore it supports portability. Then another example for portability is programming language level virtualization. In case of programming language level virtualization, you can develop Java code in one platform and you can port it to other platform very easily. Then efficient use of resources. See, always what happens, if you keep increasing the number of virtual machine instances, you can see better utilization of resources. So that's what the meaning here. Then easier backup and disaster recovery. Easier backup and disaster recovery. See, I told everything is configurable in case of cloud computing and virtualization. In case of virtualization, you can always you can isolate certain resources for the purpose of backup and disaster recovery. And that will be taken care by the suitable software that you use. For example, VMware ESXi. VMware is a ESXi. It's an hypervisor actually, which takes the place of operating system, which can be directly installed upon the bare hardware. That means you buy one dedicated server machine. Upon that, straight away you install VMware ESXi. Okay, that's a software, virtualization software. So as part of that, you can achieve easier backup and disaster recovery. That software provides one of the facility wherein you can achieve backup, disaster recovery, then migration of virtual machines, then partition of storage, isolating the resources, all such things you can do. Then better business continuity. So since it offers very good services, it supports for better business continuity. Then more efficient IT operations. So what is the meaning of more efficient IT operations? Say In case of IT, what happens when the demand increases, you need to provide more and more resources on the fly. So that is possible through virtualization. And sometimes resources need to be shrinked. That is also possible. So therefore, it provides more efficient IT operations. Disadvantages of virtualization. Upfront costs, especially when I say virtualization. Upfront cost is there. What is that upfront cost? Say, for example, without having suitable virtualization software, you cannot achieve virtualization. For that, you need to procure the software license. You need to procure. It is like 1 year license, 3 years license, like that. Software licensing considerations, then possible learning curve. So different softwares will work differently. So obviously, what happens when you keep changing the virtualization related software tools? So obviously, there is a possibility of learning again and again new things. Okay, that means how to do the same thing using different softwares. For example, the procedure to take a backup in one software may be different from other. Then performance degradation. See, performance degradation happens only when you load up too many applications. When you load too many applications, then performance degradation happens. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. Then inefficiency and degraded user experience. See, where that inefficiency and degraded user experience happens because of maybe the lapses in network. When there are lapses in the network setup, obviously inefficiency and degraded user experience happens. So therefore, one of the prerequisite for virtualization is very good network setup and very good bandwidth. Then security holes and new threats. See, always security is of the major concern. Why? Because when you say virtualization, so someone is maintaining your applications, so they are taking the backup and recovery of your data. So always there is a threat for security. Now case study example. So Zen para virtualization. So Zen is an architecture for which is based upon microkernel architecture. Friends, you need to understand what is the actual kernel and microkernel. Say for example, mobile phones are designed based upon microkernel architecture, whereas desktop operating systems are based upon full-fledged kernel architecture. So when I say microkernel, it provides only the basic functionality. Say for example, file management, process management, memory management, and so on. Zen is an open source initiative, and it is developed by a group of researchers at the University of Cambridge. And if you want more information about Zen, that can be made available. So that is made available using this URL, that is zenproject.org. Then it supports desktop virtualization and server virtualization. That means Zen supports for both desktop virtualization and server virtualization. And Zen is also having cloud platform, and we call it as XCP. X stands for Zen, and C and P stands for cloud platform. Now look at the architecture of Zen. See here, in the Zen, the basic layer is the hardware, and it is built upon x86 architecture. You know, right? Pentium x86 machines. So this Zen is based upon x86 architecture, and you can see here there is a Zen hypervisor which can be directly installed upon the hardware. So Zen hypervisor. So as I told, it is a microkernel architecture. Microkernel means it provides only the basic functionalities, that is memory management, CPU management, CPU state registers, and device I/O. And where it executes such instructions will be executed in ring 0. Ring 0 executes the instructions that are related to memory management, CPU, maintaining the state of the CPU registers, and device input output related instructions. That will be executed in ring 0. You know that is the super user mode or the kernel mode. Then ring 1 is called as the domain 0. Students, this is very important. When you study Zen architecture, ring 1 is very important. Ring 1 is called as domain 0. The meaning of domain 0 is, I'll take one example. Say I have one dedicated server machine. Upon that, I am installing Zen hypervisor. When I say Zen hypervisor, so the first inside that, whatever the first guest operating system that I install, that becomes domain 0. After that, I may install 2 more guest operating systems. So guest operating system 2 and 3. So now overall, in my example, I have 3 guest operating systems. Guest operating system 1, 2, and 3. Now, the guest operating system 1 becomes, that is the virtual machine 1 will becomes domain 0, which is responsible for controlling the remaining guest operating systems. Say for example, so you want to allocate some extra memory to second guest operating system, that will be taken care by domain 0. If you want to provide more processor support for guest operating system 3, once again that will be taken care by domain 0. That means domain 0 is meant for, see here, domain 0 is meant for virtual machine management, HTTP interface, access to the Zen hypervisor. Access to Zen hypervisor. So all such things will be taken care by domain 0. Now there is one more concept called as domain U. Now I told I'm considering 3 guest operating systems. Now the first guest operating system is called as domain 0, and the guest operating system 2 and 3 are called as domain U. U means user. Okay. The first guest operating system becomes domain 0, and all remaining guest operating systems or the virtual machines become domain U. It is the domain 0 which always controls the Zen hypervisor. Okay, that is the final takeaway, students. You can see here, ring 1 domain 0, and here domain U. So domain U is guest operating system, then modified code base, then hypercalls. Just like how you have system calls, okay, here the system calls are replaced by hypercalls. By using the hypercalls, the guest operating system can interact with the Zen hypervisor. Then above this, upon domain U, you can install user applications. Okay, all the user applications are installed on domain U. Students, there is one disadvantage part in this Zen architecture. What is that disadvantage part is? So I told, now the domain U controls all remaining guest operating systems. So therefore, if you are successful in hacking domain 0, that means you can control all the guest operating systems. Let us assume you are having 2 guest operating systems. If you hack domain 0, then you can control the operations of all the remaining guest operating systems. So that is one of the disadvantages of Zen architecture. Otherwise, it is considered as one of the most popular and powerful hypervisor. And it is based upon microkernel architecture, and it is built upon Pentium x86 machines. That's all, students. Tomorrow we will see VMware full virtualization and remaining concepts. So tomorrow we don't have class. Our next class will be on Monday. One minute, students. I'll take the attendance. 1 minute, wait. Answer for the attendance. Asta Bachawat. Asta Bachawat. Abhinav.
Present, sir.
Aishwarya.
Present, sir.
Arbaz. Arjun.
Present, sir.
Bhargavi.
Present, sir.
Debamalia.
Present, sir.
Deepika.
Present, sir.
Gangubai.
Present, sir.
Why you didn't answer when I called you several times? You're coming for the attendance or what? Huh?
No, sir. That time my internet connection went, no, sir.
Guria Kumari.
Present, sir.
Junjat Singh.
Present, sir.
Kavya. Kavya.
Present, sir.
Lata.
Yes, sir.
Manisha.
Present, sir.
Pavitra.
Present, sir.
Maithili. Maithili.
sir.
Priyanka.
Present, sir.
Pavan.
Present, sir.
Akash. Akash. Rakesh.
Present, sir.
Rakesh.
Present, sir.
Ravi Shankar.
Yes, sir.
Rizwan.
Present, sir.
Vishal.
Present, sir.
Savita.
Yes, sir.
Shruti. Shruti. Sneha.
Yes, sir.
Spurti.
Present, sir.
Srinidhi.
Present, sir.
Vaishnavi.
Present, sir.
Vinny.
Present, sir.
That's all, students. That's all for today.